everybody, to SSL Premier 2017 Season 1. We do have the playoff round 1 here. It's going to be Solar versus Stats. We will have an interview with both of those two players. Of course, I am joined by Wolf to start off the second half of playoffs tonight.
That's right. We're off here on the side stage because only a few people can fit on that stage, and you and I don't have the wonderful Korean fluency of our Korean commentators, so we're going to be over here bring you guys the translation, of course, of that upcoming interview. Really excited, of course, about tonight's matchup that we have coming up. The two Splice players, teammates facing off against each other. Should be a great night.
Yeah, it's a rematch of actually the first day where they had to play each other in the first day of SSL Premier 2017. It was a really close match. I went back and watched those VODs. We're studying up on them. There was so much action. It was really back and forth. It could have been anyone's game, and now that we have a best of 5 between these two players, it's going to be even better.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more extended than our Brood War best of 3 we just had, as StarCraft 2 games usually a lot faster than Brood War games. So this will be a best of 5. It's going to be best of 5 for all these StarCraft 2, the SSL Premier, until the Grand Finals, which will be a best of 7.
Yeah, and of course, as we saw in a really cool opening, Innovation is waiting there for the winner of the round 2 playoffs here, which Biel is waiting actually for the winner of this match. So those are our 4 players here from playoffs, and it looks like we're ready to jump into the interview as both of our players are going to join the Korean commentators up on stage. This will be translated for you guys right now.
Sorry, hello everybody. This is the global producer for SPO.TV Games. We do have Stats and Solar on stage. So the first question is, Solar, did you have a good night's sleep? And Solar says, yes, I'm a very heavy sleeper. I feel great. Same question to Stats. Stats says, yeah. And he says he's very tired right now. And he says, I'm usually a heavy sleeper, but tonight, you know, I got enough rest, but I just don't feel refreshed. Cass, are you asking maybe it's the matchup? Are you feeling a lot of pressure? And Stat says, not quite, but Solar is being very creative. He's been very good against Protoss these days. So I think we're in for a really fun match today. Now, 1 year ago, Solar had a really momentous result on this match in the losers finals. And Kanata asked, do you have any, lingering doubts or thoughts about that? And Solar says, back then I was really nervous. I was 1 year younger. But now I have a lot more experience and I don't feel any pressure at all. I feel like this is going to be a really comfortable match for me. Now Caster on pointing towards the recent patch in between, back then and now. And Stats pointing towards the Zealot charge mechanic that's been changed. And he says a lot of Protoss players are kind of changing into new metas, new playstyles. And he feels like his counterparts, his Protoss counterparts, have adapted really well with the recent patch. Now, Solar and Stats met on an online tournament under the new patch a few days ago. What do the players think have changed since then and now? And Solar says specifically since the patch, like Stats said, Protoss players have been really creative, trying out new things. So I've personally been focusing on defending all those different things. So all kinds of defense is what Solar has been practicing until now. But honestly, Solar says it sounds like it's going to be a really tough match for me. Now finally, they're going to ask for score predictions from the two players. More specifically because in the SSL Premier we do have achievements, and if you correctly predict your score, you get an achievement. And Stat says whoever wins the first set is going to win 3-0. And that player is definitely going to be Stats. Meanwhile, Solar, same answer, but the winning player is going to be Solar.
So guys, that is going to be us jumping into this best of 5. So get hyped. We're going to go back to the casting desk, and we'll see you in just a few. All right, we're back, guys. It's time for this best of 5. As you guys can see in our current standings, Innovation is currently in the grand finals. He has the highest rank at 7-2. That's why he was seeded directly to the playoffs.
Oh, look at that. They have all the prize money over there on the right side, too, for how many times they've won a bunch of games. So if you guys are curious about how much money these guys are earning at the same time, we kind of put it into numbers there for you. But the top 4 players are the 4 players here in the playoffs for season number 1. So, of course, the way it works is kind of the pennant race, 4th versus 3rd, the winner of that versus the 2nd place, and then the winner of that against the 1st place. So let's go over some of the stats from these 2 players.
That's right. Now, Solar has an incredible win rate versus Protoss in SSL, 65 nearly. This has been historically his best matchup. He did lose to Stats last year in the SSL loser final. His favorite map, of course, is Overgrowth, and he's 4-0 in 2017. So this guy is definitely a big contender. Some would say the favorite, just considering the matchup in terms of Zerg versus Protoss. There's so much history here. Obviously, these two are teammates, and this was kind of an issue in the last time for Solar. He wants to get revenge because he was on the cusp of getting to that grand finals. It was Stats who won that semifinal match. Well, it's the loser final, right? But very much similar. And he went on to lose that grand finals to Dark. So perhaps this time Solar can get his revenge and do what he did in the last season of SSL.
Yeah, he definitely wants that revenge for the SSL kind of title. But of course, Stats himself, a recent champion over at GSL Season 1, getting his first big title. So both of these guys actually champions, as Solar eventually did win against Dark in the SSL the last season of last year. You can see this guy has so many games in SSL. He's one of the guys that has been around for quite a while, always qualifies for the SSL ever since last year, and always does quite well.
Now, comparing these two in their head-to-head results, you could see that Protoss versus Zerg is one of the worst matchups for Stats, whereas again, this is the matchup that Solar is most known for. He's 22-12 to the 14-17. In terms of SSL alone, you have to add the Pro League stats to that when he was on Samsung, and it just adds up. It gets higher and higher, especially in Legacy of the Void. So this is going to be a really, really tough one to call. I think a lot of people will lean towards Solar, given his history in the matchup. We're on a new patch where Zealot Charge has been buffed in terms of its cost at the Twilight Council. We'll see if that ends up being significant here, as there's already been a lot of talk of that in the interview even, as players are getting more creative, trying to find ways to utilize that early charge.
Yeah, and I just want to let you guys know what that says on the bottom. They're actually selling these really cool packs of the player pins, but also it's got a player picture inside there, and also it has a really fancy box with a really cool logo on it. I saw it before. They were showing it off at SSL Challenge too, so if you guys are here in the studio and you want to pick that up, just ask where you can buy that. I'm sure it's definitely available. as they were saying it here, it is available to buy in the studio for now.
Yeah, and if you don't buy it, like today, I'm going to buy all the ones that are left after this broadcast, so you better get down here right now.
Wolf is the collector of everything StarCraft, or basically anything Korean esports.
That's right, man.
Watch out, he's going to snatch them all up if you guys aren't quick enough.
I hang the jerseys of all the defending champions on my wall, man. I'm the collector guy. So, as you can see, Solar #1 in terms of achievements, and this is going to be another potential SSL victory for him, as he is the defending SSL champion. He was able to defeat Dark in the finals, do what Stats could not in Season 1 for 2016. And he looks to be in good spirits here in the lobby chat.
Looks really confident. He always seems to be very confident in his interviews as well. And obviously these guys kind of going at it in the lobby chat before this game even starts. They're both part of the same team now, Splice, along with TY, who joined afterwards. So definitely these guys practicing a ton together, and obviously a lot of mind games that can go into this best of 5. And just the fact that it's a best of 5 too is going to make things even more interesting.
That's right. So a bit of a deeper series, not quite the best of 7 that we've had previously for SSL matches for StarCraft 2. So it's actually a little bit of a shorter one. Not as much flexibility for either player. It comes down really to the momentum here. And both players agreed in that interview that the player that wins the first game will win the entire series in a landslide. So this first match, according to the players, is going to be hyper important as we start things off on Overgrowth for map #1. This is going to be the map choice, of course, of Solar most often. Actually, he didn't preference it this time, though. It was actually his lowest map choice, in fact, despite picking it so many times in this tournament. It was actually his 5th priority. So Overgrowth, Vestige, Whirlwind, Newkirk Precinct, and Frost will be the maps.
I don't know. It's kind of weird because on our sheets it actually shows the choices as flipped. So not 100% sure. I think the choices on the right are supposed to be Solar's.
Oh, yeah.
The ones on the left are supposed to be Stats's.
That makes a lot more sense.
But either way, guys, we're going to be jumping into game #1 on Overgrowth to start this playoffs.
Solar, Hyungmin-soo. Stat, Kim Dae-yeon.
Here we go, guys. Game #1, Fly Better Fly, Jin Air. And we are going to be flying onto this map. Up in the top right, the Zerg player, it is Solar. Always confident, always bouncing in his chair, it seems.
That's right. And his opponent to the bottom left, his teammate currently, will of course be Stats. So 1 player of each race now for Splice in Korea, sponsorship. Definitely seems like the players are very close and friendly with each other, though, even though they are not living in a traditional Kespa team house. No doubt they practice with each other when they're not playing against each other in a playoff round. And this is going to be a tense one. Obviously, the history between these two in SSL, always being each other's gatekeepers towards the end of the finals. Solar was more successful in his finals than Stats was, but Stats is the defending GSL champion, which is a more recent tournament, it's a more recent result than, of course, the win for Solar in SSL. It's going to be a Nexus first, skipping the gate, so a bit of a greedier opening than the normal gate Nexus core.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk about the new patch, as we were talking about it, the Korean commentators were talking about it, guys on Team Liquid and Reddit were talking about it, but I think a lot more has to do with form as well, and where these two players are in terms of just how well they're playing. And we had that cool stat that Solar, he's fantastic in ZVP, he always has been, but the misleading one is where he was 4-0 against Protosses in SSL Premier. 2 of those Protosses were ranked 9th and 10th, SOS and Zest, and the other one was Patience, so he was kind of middle of the pack, wasn't really the strongest Protoss that we've ever had here in the Premier League of SSL. Really, Stats was his biggest Protoss opponent, whereas Stats had to go up against not only Solar, but also Dark and Biel. Biel currently in 2nd place. Dark also kind of middle of the pack, but Solar here in 4th place. So definitely a stronger Zerg kind of pool in SSL Premier. And Stats in every one of those games that he played against Zergs went 2-1 or lost 1-2. So
I think it's important that you add the asterisk to the Stats, because Stats no pun intended here, but stats, of course, shown on screen can be misleading.
Yeah.
But when you put it in terms of reality, in terms of which players you're talking about, we talked about this earlier in Classic as well, as, you know, Sulky had the by far worst win rate in the matchup, but also has played against way better opponents over his recent career. His mind was like just a Royal Roader. He didn't find much other success outside of Pro League. So we're going to see the quick Twilight Council coming up here. We'll see what this shifts into being, because just because Charge's cost was reduced doesn't mean we're just going to see Charge every game or anything like that. It's really it's not an insignificant change, but it's not a game changer in terms of how the meta will shift. Let's see how it gets played. Yeah. Twilight Council is already scouted by these Lings.
Yeah, fantastic scout here for the Zerg, and I was actually watching the VODs of these two players play in day 1 of SSL Premier, which was quite a while back. I think that was in March, or even April. It was a while back either way, and it was more importantly before the patch. But Stats did go Charge in that game and went kind of Charge Immortal Archon against a very heavy Ravager composition of Solar, and he almost killed him multiple times with that play. Eventually, Solar did win the game because Stats kind of overextended a couple of times, and then eventually Solar killed him at his gold. But we might be seeing that Charge here once again on this map if Stats wants to play a similar style.
Absolutely, a high chance of that. It's going to be the Dark Shrine first, as we saw the probe hovering around next to the Twilight Council there, so dropped it down right afterwards. And Overlord is coming into Scout right now. But the thing about the Dark Shrine, of course, is that it leads into the Archon drops. The Warp Prism's already coming out here, so this is just going to be a pretty standard harassment. It's still important that Solar knows about it and kick the Spore Crawlers up, but usually you harass with the DTs. If the Zerg doesn't scout or make some mistake, you can get a lot of extra kills with the DTs, but the follow-up with the Archon drop is the more important part, and that's where you're going to find the drone kills, you're going to find the map control.
Yeah. Stats, I know I've been talking about those other games, but Stats using the Archon drops in, I think, 2 of the 3 games. He went double Oracle on Newkirk Precinct, but definitely a very strong strategy that Stats loves to use against Zerg, and I'm just curious about the transition here, what exactly he wants to go into. So far, just an Immortal on the way afterwards, no Observers just yet. And here comes that first Warping.
And let's see if he just commits to the Archons immediately. Not even going to harass the DTs because he knows he was scouted earlier. It's not even worth risking losing a DT, then you don't have 2 Archons. Here's the very quick Charge upgrade, and we could see a follow-up attack with the Charge in the Immortals, or you may just use it to pair with the follow-up drops, because obviously Zealots can be stronger than Adepts often with Charge in terms of harassment. So we'll see, if this Warp Prism lives, he harasses, kills some drones, forces a reaction, then warps in some Charge Zealots. That's the thing that he could possibly be following up with, but 4 more gateways here.
This is very interesting. Because Solar, he didn't go for the Overlord speed, the follow-up scout after the first scout is going to be very hard for him to get. So, he sees the Dark Shrine, and as you were saying, that's not really that big of a scout. It's like, okay, I can just put down some spores, but I know it's going to be the Archon drop. But he doesn't know exactly what the follow-up is. He can see, okay, there's still no third base. Maybe he's playing safe, I'm not 100% sure, but what we know is that Stats is going for what looks like a really big Charge all-in off of 2 bases. Still only 44 probes.
Yeah.
And that Charge about to finish up here.
Okay, this Overlord Scout, or Overseer Scout, I should say, is going to be super important. Sees 2 of the 4 gateways. I think probably we'll see the edge of the other ones, but he needs to prepare right now. He's starting a Spinecrawler, getting a few Zerglings out, but it's really going to be Roaches that he needs. Roaches kind of hard counter this, obviously. If you can micro them well, he's going to even have to split them a little bit against the Archons. Charge Zealot's going to do a ton of damage, even against Roaches. He's going to have to kite back and have Lings for a little bit of a buffer. This is a really strong attack, very well timed. Let's see if all these Roaches will be able to hold here. Sporecrawler actually being repositioned to the front as well.
Still a lot of Zerg here. It's really just dealing with these Archons that's going to be the hard part. As you were saying, the Zealots kind of melt away right away. And another big Corrosive Bile on top of those Sentries here. Solar still, it looks like he's going to be able to hold on pretty easily.
Yeah, where's the Prism? Okay, very far back. He warps in another round of Charge Zealots, but the Roaches are mostly gone now. The Immortals here, cleaning them up. We talk about the Archons, but there wasn't any targeting of the Immortals. It was just the Archons he dealt with. So Zealot's coming here for the follow-up. This Immortal with 5 health is going to actually continue to help deal with these Roaches. That's a barrier! Oh my god!
11 kills on that Immortal too. And there's another big warp in of 8 Zealots. Still
and he
desperately. Okay, he finally does get it. The drones are going to be pulled here though. Let's see if he can actually get the surround here on that Immortal. Looks like a pretty decent surround, but already a bunch of drones
So many drones
down.
dying here, and this is going to make reinforcing a lot more difficult for Solar, but he will hold this push for now, forcing the lift up. Several drones were killed. Stats starts another Immortal at home. Will probably start probes, and even adds now a Templar Archive, so the attack is held. It was not a flawless defense. He did lose probes, but with a commitment to this heavy of a Zealot attack, which isn't going to be as useful later on in the game, you have to give Solar a slight edge after this exchange. Good micro on those Immortals. Without that micro, this actually would have been a total bopping, I feel, by Solar.
Yeah, still Solar walking on that knife's edge, looking, I thought it was going to be an easier hold than that when I first saw it, but those roaches beginning to melt away. And with Solar, he was on 58 drones, I think, for the majority of that. Eventually, he did have to use them, but we'll see what he wants to follow up with here, because he's on pretty low tech himself. I mean, he does have the lair, I do believe, but he doesn't have that Evo Chambers, no upgrades. He's only now getting the Baneling Nest. And he is going to expand to the gold. This is kind of the way that he played in their previous game on Overgrowth. He just went very heavy Ling Bane Ravager and some roaches mixed in, eventually Hydras as it got late game. But he took that gold very fast and wanted to hold it there and use that economy, that income, to crush his Protoss opponent.
Yeah, you just get this overwhelming amount of units once you have that gold base. You get this good boost. And that's going to be something that Stats is going to struggle to deal with. He's trying to continue to find damage with this Immortal, but it just feels like it's not all too powerful right now. The gold base will get canceled when he sees this follow-up attack coming across the map. Now, Stats does have the third base coming up, but he's still not making probes. I think he's just really putting up errors in terms of that third Nexus. He wants to actually do a hardcore amount of damage with this attack, but so many Ravagers set up here. He's going to have the Concave, a few Banes as well to help deal with those Zealots. Even just the 6 Banes without speed will really soak up that Zealot attack and make it a lot weaker.
Yeah, it's a very similar composition from Stats, a very similar supply to what he used in the first attack. But this time, Solar's got more stuff, and now the Immortals are up in front, actually mismicroing there. One of the Immortals is going to be picked off, and let's see if Stats actually does want to commit to this attack. It looks like he's hesitating just a bit.
Just wants to make sure there's no fourth base while he continues to probe up back at home. It's funny because when you have an army like this, you want to force field out the Banelings, but then you're like, well, I'm also force fielding out my Zealots then, I guess. So it's kind of awkward in that way. He backs off and does keep the majority of his army alive. The key here for Stats is no fourth base, and he doesn't lose his expensive units. He doesn't lose the majority of his Immortals. And also those Zealots, the Zealot-based army that he's going to need to hold on to eventually a fourth base.
Yeah. It's definitely a good point that you made, because he essentially lost one Immortal for denying a gold base for about 2 minutes in this game. So that's a really huge amount of time when you consider how much lost mining time that he could have had at that gold. And now Solar trying to catch up, trying to pick off what he can. He will restart that fourth base. And now it's Solar's turn to get a little bit aggressive. We do have +1 and Storm on the way. That's definitely going to be really important for stopping this push. But Solar, he's hitting now.
Okay, the +1's going to be so important,
the
especially
High
versus Lings. They don't have Storm.
Oh man, 3 of them just getting caught. A 4th one is going to go down. That is massive.
I think this is actually just going to be game. He needed that Storm to hold. He does not have it. The Lings are getting totally destroyed here by the Zealots. Now that +1 is done, but it doesn't matter because the rest of the army is already gone. He needed those Storms. He did get them. GG. Solar going to win on Overgrowth. The map he highly prioritized. The graphic, of course, earlier was a mistake. It was actually flopped.
Yeah.
But that was
big flop.
A big flop, man. But
by everyone involved, for sure.
It was a big flop. Well, that hold was a big flop for Stats because he didn't have Storm in time. He was so desperately trying to get it out, but he failed there in the end. Didn't actually have the ability to force field off to buy time because there were so many Ravagers out for Solar. You could just bust those force fields. And a strong lead here. And remember, both these players said in the opening interview they thought the first game was absolutely going to be the most important. Both of them saying, if I win the first game, I'm going to win this 3-0. And so Solar takes that important momentum now away from Stats as we go into Belshir Vestige.
And Solar, he was talking about how much he has practiced holding off all this weird, wonky Protoss BS early on in these games nowadays with the new patch, and he held it off pretty well. Some damage involved, but Stats, it was a very big all-in, and it just did not pay off. We're going to show the map list once again. This is the correct choices for both of these players. Now it's flipped.
Yeah, Vestige will be the second choice for highly prioritized by Stats, although Solar did not avoid the map. This is actually his fourth choice. Let's go into game number 2 to see if Stats can take the momentum back or if Solar is going to take a very early 2-0 lead.
Here we go, second map, Belcher Vestige. And up here in the top left, the purple Zerg able to take game 1. It is Solar.
And his opponent down to the bottom right, a failed defense without Storm. It's Stats. Hyper-aggressive attack. The first attack was microed so much better than the second one. It's as if his Immortals were pretending to be Zealots in the second attack as they were up in the front lines and got picked off by... Well, I mean, one got picked off, which really totally shut down the push by Ravager, Corrosive Biles, and Roach Focus Fire. This time it's going to be the Gate Nexus core, the safer variation from Stats on Belcher, and Solar is going to take the Greedy Hatch first. So we've already seen the, Archon drops into the Charged Zealot attack now on this new patch. Obviously, it's a little bit easier to do. We've seen attacks like this, as you mentioned before, already in this tournament, but a little bit more efficient, a little bit easier, a little bit faster to get that out. You don't have to worry about the gas cost of the charge after the Dark Templar as much with the reduction to 100, but it was still shut down by Solar. And the big question is, will we be seeing more play like this from Stats, or is he going to show us a different style every game? I'm hoping so, because it feels like Solar already kind of has the number on that Charged Zealot follow-up to the DTs.
Yeah, you could see that he was almost expecting it. He didn't super over-drone as he has done in other series. We've seen him go up to stuff like 65 drones, 68 drones, and that one he stopped at 58, and he tried to get a follow-up scout with the Overseer, and even before the scout with the Overseer, he had stopped making drones. So he knew on a map, especially like Overgrowth, a very small one like that he had to play it careful. So he expects this kind of play out of Stats, and this is what we were talking about. He must practice with this guy so much. He must be used to dealing with all this new Protoss timings early on in the game with the decreased gas on charge and decreased minerals, but he seemed to be able to hold it pretty well. Now we see Stats over here with a bit of a proxy. It is going to be a Stargate.
A proxy Stargate, and it's not on the Overlord scouting path here for Solar, so unlikely he will see it. And because the rush distance on this map is a lot longer, the Overlord's going to take some time to close the gap. And because he didn't get Overlord speed, just like the previous set, before he could even know that there are pylons missing or that there is hidden tech, you might just assume it's another Twilight Council coming up. And assuming is the worst thing you can do on a two-player map, especially in StarCraft. So let's see if he sends Lings across the map. But he's actually just going to commit to the speed. He knows he needs to find out what Stats is doing because so far there's been no inclination whatsoever.
Yeah. Really good play by him. Definitely like this choice strategically for Solar. And you can see that Stats, he wants to head on up into the main, actually, see if he can find some scouting information, but doesn't actually check the main. Maybe just wanted to snipe a couple of drones or something like that. Notice that Stats kept that proxy probe all the way down in the bottom left. There's like a small little yellow dot, just that one probe chilling, because he knew that if he went back home, the Overlord would see it, and then perhaps Solar would be tipped off about the proxy. So only now is Solar going to be like, okay, wait, stuff is missing. What's going on?
Let's see if he adds a safety spore. I think the idea with that Adept was to maybe get a few shots off on the Queen so that he could target the Queen down with this Oracle and then just get free drones. It's still only going to be the one Queen. Very
late. Oh, here we go. The Oracle comes on in. Good pull by Solar very early on, but again, as you were saying, one Queen is not enough.
Okay, it turns these drones around real quick, but still only the 3 picks. There's going to be a second Oracle out very soon, however, as the Lings actually expect this is an even more aggressive proxy than it is. She's like, where is it? I know it's out there. But here they will finally find it. But it doesn't matter. The second Oracle's already out. He shouldn't commit to a third. And this is already a decent amount of damage. A lot of pressure put onto Solar. He's actually going to add a Phoenix after this. The Lings, did he?
No, he actually just didn't even see it. He ran over there, but he just did not actually check the location. And Again, I feel like this could have done a little bit more damage. So, Stats' micro with the first Oracle was not the cleanest we've ever seen, but still, as you were saying, a good amount of damage, 6 drones in total, and he keeps both of those Oracles alive, which is always important.
Yeah, he had to make 2 Spore Crawlers too, so it's almost like it's really 8 drones in terms of drones lost, because, you know, when Zerg has to make static defense, they pay money to lose drones, so that's an extra added benefit. Obviously, the Spores will be useful all game long. You can use them to deter later on. Warp Prism drops, and even I suppose Phoenix Harass. Looks like it's just going to be the early Phoenix here to clear Overlords, though. As we see the normal transition, the 3rd base is coming up, the Twilight Council, the Robo. Going to try to look for some gas drones here. Good control, actually having the healthier Oracle at the front, so it gets 3 more kills.
Stats in a fantastic spot in this game. He has cut down Solar to way less workers than him for quite a while, and Stats got that 3rd base super safely. There was nothing that Solar could do to punish that because he was just heavily droning, but at the same time taking a bunch of damage at home. So he just had no attacking units, could not commit to the Zerglings because he had to remake those drones, and this is the safest 3rd base ever for Stats. So now he can easily transition into Twilight Tech, get that Warp Prism out, and his economy is going to be booming here in just a bit.
Don't forget, too, you know, that the Oracles are good tools defensively as well. So it's not like Solar could have just made a bunch of Lings to stop this 3rd base. So all the while, Stats gets away with the 3rd base without making those gateways, without having an army presence on the map. Now he has the gateways finished. He has the economy to support them. He's going to have glaives. And Solar is just kind of on the back foot at this point. See if he decides to take a 4th base or if he wants to be aggressive with this Hydralisk Den that's just now finished.
Really good scout with that Overseer to see this army coming over. So now he's got his stuff in position. It's still going to be not the easiest hold in the world, especially with Resonating Glaives about to finish up here. Those 8 gateways. It looks like he just warped in a bunch more units.
Yeah, he's just going to move across the map here. Hydra's desperately trying to get them out right now, and Hydra's speed's going to be on the way. He wants to counterattack after he holds this. But we'll see if he can even do that. Several sentries here, and he's going to try to use this hatchery against the Zerg army. Lings were already in position, but he didn't actually commit to attacking there because he knows with the glaives here, he wants to attack with all of his units together. 10 more Roaches on the way here, very few Hydras. He just doesn't have a whole lot to defend.
Yeah, and we're sitting at 3 base versus 3 base right now, so really a bad spot for Solar as just way too many Adepts right on the front door. He cannot mine from that 3rd. He's going to attempt to go for a counterattack. Stats commits on top of all these Roaches.
He has these Oracles, but there are a few Queens here targeting the Oracles down. Roach is actually starting to help deal with these. The sentries, not really all too useful, should be targeting those Roaches on the Adepts. And the counterattack here may force a warp in at home. He is going to commit now up this ramp, but you know, this is eventually going to get shut down. He's killing a lot of drones, however, and he has that 3rd base. He has a decent proc count. He's at 62. This is not an all-in from Stats, but I feel like it's losing value quickly. And the transition from here is definitely going to be a tough one.
Yeah. The most clean play we could have seen was you go into the 3rd base, you take a good fight, you deny a bunch of mining, kill all those drones, and then you back out. Or you warp in something else, like Stalkers, to deal with all these Roaches. But shading on top of the gigantic Roach force and running your Oracles into the Queens was, I think, Stats just with a little bit of overconfidence and saying, I think I have enough to kill this guy right now. But he would have been so far ahead if he just backed off or took the fight with a better composition.
Not to mention, too, that he was under attack at that time, so his multitasking was definitely taxed by that Zergling run by, so he definitely could have microed that better and perhaps just forgot to cancel, or in the heat of the moment, StarCraft's a hard game, just didn't hit the button fast enough, so this Warp Prism is going to be completely shut down. He should, you know, keep it alive, of course, but dropping the Adepts out would be suicide at this stage. He is getting double Robo Immortal. He's making all the right transitions back at home, but denying this 4th base now, it just feels like a dream for Stats. He just can't actually get over there. He doesn't have an army mustered up just yet. He's building it, but somehow, someway, this Prism will find a few drone kills, so nicely done. But Solar feels really comfortable now. It was a really stressful attack, and I feel like with that 1 micro mistake, everything changed.
Yeah, it definitely did. You were talking about how comfortable Solar is. He's just droning up like mad right now. We'll see if he wants to go into any higher tech. Like I was saying before, he seemed very comfortable to just stay on Ling, Bane, Roach, Ravager, and Hydra. So we'll see if he wants to change up any of that tech or just wants to stay with this composition, perhaps max out and then try to go kill Stats at the 3rd base. They have a bunch of drop overlords being morphed right now.
And more Hydras coming out. Could see some Hydra drops. Hydras kill probes so fast. Without the Lurker Den, you know, he can't drop Lurkers. He didn't make that, right? I'm pretty sure he did not. So, I mean, otherwise he'd be making Lurkers right now. So, I think we might see some Hydra drops. You're going to use the Hydras, obviously, to help defend against these charge Zealots. This is more the charge I was thinking we were going to see as the follow-up with the Archon drop last game. Because charge will rip through drones very quickly. You can even harass structures with charge Zealots that will actually soon have +1.
It's pretty insane what you can do if you have double Warp Prism plus Zealots on the ground with some kind of forward pylon. You can see that he wanted to hit 3 locations at once. It was a little bit staggered, and he actually lost one of his Warp Prisms, but it's still keeping Solar back. It's still doing a bunch of damage, and Stats is even trying to get out Storm here, a 4th base. Storm could definitely do quite a number to all those Hydras that Solar seems to wants to mix into his comp.
He has the Lurker Den on the way. I don't know what became of those drop overlords. Okay, here they are. So, is it Roaches or Hydras in there? It looks like
it's
Roaches
a mix,
and
but
Hydras?
mostly Roaches.
Okay, so this is going to be the 2-pronged attack. He's going to hit the 4th base with this really difficult to deal with comp right before Storm is ready. Prism's actually just happens to see this, but can he defend both fronts here with this small army? His army is really cost efficient, but it needs to fight all together, which is why Solar is going to split it in 2. Good Storms here, though, on the Hydras.
Yeah, really good force fields, too, to cut up that army, but does he have enough stuff to follow up after the Storms? He's going to go for a counterattack at the 4th base at the same time, and that army of the Protoss looks a little bit too strong on the left side, so he'll definitely win that fight, but he does have to clean up his main.
Funny overcharge there on the right side of this army as he's trying to desperately muster up enough units to defend. Solar forced to send units home to defend those Zealots at the same time. This drop will be pushed away, and Stats somehow, someway holds this off on both fronts with those Psy Storms. But here comes the Hydra drop I'm talking about.
Oh, the High Templar in the middle of the map.
Misclick,
a huge mistake.
Guess.
Definitely, they were all alone. No Warp Prism, no anything.
Look at how quick Hydras kill probes, though. That's actually insane. 8 probes go down, even with the pull there. Yeah. 1 Roach here, too. Going to start working on some of these. He's even going to evacuate this. So finally, we're starting to see Stats struggle into the pressure. But losing all those Templars is such a problem. He was in such a great spot with all the tech he'd built, with the 4th base he'd defended, with all those high Templar. But now he decided to dump a ton of his gas into those Templar. This Prism's going to get shut down, too. And now Solar has a Lurker tech.
They have no energy. Oh, okay. It looks like they just barely got enough energy for the Storm. But definitely a weak point if Solar could get some units over there. He's going to try to get another drop, actually, into the main. That +2 is about to finish up. Looks like he wants to target that Forge.
Oh, here come the Lings now into the 4th base, too. It's just so much pressure now.
Denied +2. He did get that upgrade, so here's the big attack. A lot of High Templar on the right side. Actually going to land a couple of Storms.
Yeah, but he's not dealing with this drop in the main base very well. And in fact, there's not a whole lot of anti-air here. Solar could just pick back up and leave. Losing the important tech here. It looks like he lost his Templar Archive too. Replacing it, then canceling it. The multitasking here failing Stats against this multi-pronged harassment now.
Yeah, Solar's really beginning to bring the hurt. Doesn't look like he has enough stuff after sustaining all of that harass to deal with this many Lurkers right at his 4th base. Barely even mining from there right now, and it looks like he's run out of Storm, too.
Until this moment, he always had the better tech, the more cost-efficient army, despite it being smaller. But now that the Lurkers are here, you can't really make that argument anymore. Even with these Immortals, there's not enough Storms to supplement that. And if he actually gets a burrow off here, this could be lights out here in game number 2. Stats will react, though. He does get away, but he still doesn't have that important 4th base, whereas Solar does. He has a 5th base now.
These 3 Zealots attempting to be the hero of the Protoss army right now, trying to save Ire by themselves, but doubtful at this point, as we saw the Templar Archives go down. It looks like he has remade it, and there comes 6 more High Templar, so he does have that on the way. We'll see if some Miracle Storms can save Stats at this point.
It can definitely work out for him if he can actually stabilize and get maxed out with the Storms and the Immortals. You can fight that Lurker, Roach Ravager army, even the Roach Hydra. You can do it, but just so difficult to actually get that cost-efficient force up when you can't hold on to a 4th base. He needs to stop this attack right here, right now. With the High Templar he's been able to build. Storms from the high ground.
And he does have quite a lot of Storm at this point. He remade 11 High Templar, morphed 1 into an Archon, so still 9 High Templar. Real problem is that he can't secure a 4th base, whereas Solar, his economy is totally fine right now. Another big drop into the main.
Solar is able to get the cancel and have units here in the main base for the harass. So the Nexus is now being rebuilt. She wanted to try to snipe that Archon. Very difficult to do. Oh, he cannot be fighting this.
Uh-oh. Looks like Stats in a bit of a bind. And Solar actually going to outmaneuver him in the middle of the map here. Once those lurkers get in position on the high ground here between these two bases, that might just be lights out.
Yeah, that might be all she wrote here with the lurkers in position. Kind of the wedge between natural and third. The gateways are starting to get picked off here. You know, he has the more efficient army. He has so many Psy Storms, but he just can't have them against the more mobile Zerg army that's just out-positioning him at every turn because of these drops into the main base. Solar showing us a new heavy drop style on this map, and we expected to see some innovation, some new play styles coming out from these two in the matchup, and we're seeing it already here. Stats with a failed attempted faster charge zealot attack in the last game, and in this game, Solar just showing us really good drop play. The Zealots here are finding some kills, but it's insignificant compared to how much damage this is doing. This huge attack. He's going to go for the sandwich here with the Immortals coming over, but he just can't fight into this.
You really got a feel for Stats at this point. You can see how many Templar he has with Storms. He has this army that looks strong for the Protoss, but look at the bank of Solar right now. Even if he kills this entire army, Stats is basically still going to have just this, what you see on your screen, whereas Solar definitely will have a transition point. Going to add the Spire. We might see him go into even higher tech a little bit later on. And he knows he's already done so much damage. He doesn't want to overstay his welcome. He doesn't want to get hit by 11 High Templar worth of Storm. And so he will actually just back off from here.
He wants to make the Muta switch, it looks like. This is a huge opportunity here. Like, Stats couldn't kill those Hydras either that he had the potential to Storm. He has a mostly Immortal army, and these Mutas will outmaneuver the Storms with this many of them. He should be able to crush these High Templars. So he needs to actually get some good Storms, and then boom, pop those Archons, save those High Templar, because the Archons can fight the Mutas straight up. This may become a base trade with this many Mutas. This is normally how this goes in late game, especially on Belshir, so a good choice here by Solar, but a big risk. If he messes up his control, if the Storms are good, or if he flies into Archons and loses those Mutas, a huge opportunity for Stats to take this game.
Exactly. I mean, he had a huge bank, but now it's right all here. If you run into a couple of Storms, you're not going to be too happy with those Mutas. So he's going directly for the main. As you were talking about, Belshir Vestige, a pretty massive map, even though it is 2-player. And here come those 21 Mutalisks looking to get right on top of that Templar Archives.
Yeah, he wants no more Archons, no more Storms. Not that Stats could really afford it. Oh, Stats looks like it looks like a deer in headlights right now, not actually microing or moving his army. Okay, we're going to see all these High Templar. He doesn't even want to hard engages because of the Archons. That's exactly what Stats wants. He wants him to fight this. Solar says no.
Fly away.
He's going to leave. Get out of here!
The order has been given by the Overlord. Coming on in here with all of these Mutas now. Going to deny the one last mining base. Looks like actually there is another one up here in the top left. He did just retake that.
Yeah, he did secure that, which is really important, but Storm's coming up. He needs to avoid this.
But again, as you were saying, you have to be so careful with those very expensive Mutas, but he's playing with fire right now. He keeps on going on in there, baiting out those Storms.
The thing, too, is it's a hard transition now for Solar to get the Greater Spire tech, which I think is going to have to be what he does here. He can't go Ultras against this many Immortals that are on the map, so that's going to be the next step. He needs to get a better economy, needs to actually stabilize and end up dealing with his Protoss army in order to get that Greater Spire. So he cannot be losing Mutas. He cannot lose, like, a single one, basically. He needs to be really cost-efficient with these. He's going to target down this Photon Cannon and chase down these probes. So many probes will die here. Actually, targeting the Photon Cannon instead, not actually killing too much here, but we'll have the potential to follow up with those cannons gone. You can see how much time a Photon Cannon will actually buy you in situations like this. If you're dealing with Muta play like this, just add as many cannons as you can so you can have time to get your High Templar back into position. Okay, huge Storms here. He needs to get out now. Oh, this actually was going to cost him some Mutas.
Oh, and now he's actually cornered here in the bottom left. How is he going to get out of that? I'm not exactly sure. Stats, he's got his army split up into two, and he's daring Solar right now to try to escape.
Solar is trying desperately to get that infestation pit up. He's trying to get that high tech into position. I like the sling run by. This may be what it takes to get that Protoss army out of position so he can get the Mutas out. He's going to go for it. He doesn't know where the Protoss army is, but he's going to try to make the Hail Mary escape. Wants to grab this Cybernetic score. He actually doesn't run away, so despite having a moment of freedom, will actually be cornered once again. He was going to get away around the 9 o'clock But the Hive Tech is started. This is the key. This is almost checkmate for Solar. If he can get that Greater Spire up, he'll be able to counter the composition that Stats is barely trying to hold on with. I mean, look, he has like no mineral income right now. None. I'm looking at the resources tab. He's not even mining minerals.
It's not moving. 48 is the magic number right now for Protoss, and we see what. Oh man, he's going to run into more storms, but Solar doesn't really seem to care at this point. He has done so much chip damage, and he's kept Stats on these two bases defending for so long.
He also has a mass amount of lurkers too. I mean, he has, how many lurkers does he have? He just morphed a bunch. Maybe he canceled them because he was morphing 8, but actually, it looks like he canceled them. But either way, I guess he wanted to get that Hive out faster. He wanted to get these upgrades up faster for the Broodlings even.
That way.
But like without those lurkers, actually the counterattack potential, even with small units like this, small groups of units can actually kill bases, kill drones. Okay, there are lurkers. They just don't show up on your computer.
Yeah, they're just not on the unit tab.
Your unit tab's broken.
Like, what?
Well, look, the bottom line is whatever happened to your observing PC, the lurkers didn't show, and they were not in position.
You were right. You were right. That's all that matters.
Okay, so the lurkers were not in position to defend that base to the bottom right, but he does get his army back. The Greater Spire is on the way now. He's making that transition.
Yeah, this is just the slow suffocation of Stats. It's kind of sad to see. You know, you can see how much he's struggling to come back into this game, but on a map this big, the Muta switch was actually the perfect response from Solar. Very, very smart. In the moment, able to make that decision instead of just continuing with the exact same composition he had and kind of banging his head against the wall. He just said, okay, I'll just outmaneuver him with these very mobile Mutalisks.
And it's so important that the drops gave him space to do that, because to build up the amount of gas it takes, 2,200 gas to make 22 mutas, takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of freedom of map control, which is what those drops gave him. Now we're going to start to see the big Immortal army. I mean, this Immortal army with Stalkers and Archons added in will kill a hatch so quickly. So he's surgically trying to remove these. He destroys the 3 o'clock, leaves actually the 430 base. He's just going to continue to attack. He wants to hit before the Broodlords are ready. He knows exactly what's going to happen. The Greater Spire's exposed here, and he starts the Broodlords before only 2 of them, but this Greater Spire's going to go down.
2. That's all he's going to have, 2 Broodlords, and on 29 drones, he's never going to have a chance to make another Spire, another Greater Spire, and get more Broodlords out after Corruptors.
There are 2 observers here. If he loses those, he may lose the game, because he actually needs to find a way to outmaneuver this army and fight it straight up. The Lurkers are so key right now, because he's lost so much of his economy. He's going to lose his main Nexus now.
It looks like Stats, he's found the base that's mining. He wants to go kill that 430 base you were talking about.
Yeah.
Or at least force a response from Solar, but here he comes.
Okay, he needs those observers. They're actually at the back of his army right now. This is a strategy you see even in Brood War, where you actually just mass up a bunch of spores so that the observers just fly in and die. And then once you lost the detection, you can't fight. So just has the Corruptors and Mutas right next to that spore, hoping to snipe the observers.
Oh, the Broodlords. Really important for, just keeping Stats at bay if they ever go into a straight-up fight.
Okay, Baneling's actually running. I don't know if you realize that. Okay, warps in some Zealots. I guess that's one way to deal with Banes.
Gets 3 probes.
Okay, gonna remove this base, but the real important mining one is still up. But the question now is, will Solar ever be able to muster up an army that can beat this insanely cost-efficient Protoss army on such low economy?
If he had a mass number of Broodlords, the answer would be yes, but with only 2, I'm not so sure. He does have 16 Lurkers, but they're not all here at the main location. They're mostly over at that 430 base.
It's so difficult to attack into siege stuff Lurkers, especially when you only have 2 observers. You know they're the only 2 you're ever going to have in this game. And soon, if he doesn't actually break through these Lurkers, Solar's going to rip up the last parts of his economy. Then he could just turtle for the rest of the game. So he needs to find this timing window now. He's trying to find an angle. He's trying to find the best way to attack this. I think the better option is to go back to the 430 base, and if he had the money to mass up cannons at his 9 o'clock expansion, he just doesn't have the money for that. And look, no stack defense here, just a few Archons. That is not going to be enough to save this base. Muta's actually coming for the engage here. This is Stats' last army he's ever going to have. He needs to make this count right now. Storm's going down on the Mutas. This is a really good engage for Stats.
He's going to kill the majority of those Mutas, and the Lurkers are all going to be wiped out here. Does he actually have any more observers? He does have 1.
Okay, he has 1. It's the most important. Look at this, massing up these detectors to try to kill the last of the observers.
Oh, a huge storm there on that Zerg army.
No more observers. He lost it. It's gone. And that means he can't fight the lurkers anymore. He doesn't have a base, and that is game over. He can never fight this anymore. He had one shot, one opportunity, man. He took it.
It was close. It was close. Had he kept those observers alive, maybe, perhaps, he would have been able to do it. Either way, GG is going to be called. Solar does take that win, and boy, was it a close one.
Yeah, well, you know, the key was the Muta switch. That gave him all the opportunities in the world. Well, before that, the drop. That's step one. Have that map control. Build up that gas bank with his 4th base. 8 gases will give you those 22 Mutas when you're not having to defend. You're not having to make banelings with your gas, for example. Very low upgrade game for stats, too. I believe he was actually on +1 at the end there, which made all those engages a lot tougher.
It was +1 or 1-1 against 2-2. And I think he also had +1 melee as well, did Solar. So definitely down on the upgrades. Had no blink either. So if Solar did actually go into a bunch of Broodlords and stats had some semblance of an economy, you would still have to get blink for a bunch of Stalkers to deal with them.
Just good micro on the Mutas. He had a few close calls, but the more mobile army won out against the stronger army long enough for him to build up a larger army. So there you have it. Now, Solar 2-0. You know, both these players saying they thought it was going to be a 3-0. Solar is 1 win away from that potential reality. As we're going to go to a short commercial break before we go to that 3rd game that's so important. Solar could close it out, but before that, we're going to take a short commercial break.